Welcome everyone to another Christmas tutorial. So in this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to create these gingerbread Christmas cookies in Blender. Now, if you'd like to help support me and my YouTube channel and purchase the tutorial files, then you can get that over on my Gumroad store and my Patreon page. I'll have the links in the description. And then I also wanted to thank this video's sponsor, Sketchfab. Upload and preview your own 3D models on Sketchfab. My favorite feature of Sketchfab is that you can preview 3D models online in your browser. You can also purchase models and assets from Sketchfab's model store. You can use the model inspector to preview the wireframe, matte cap, textures, and more before you purchase. You can also apply to sell your own 3D models. Check out Sketchfab with the link below. Now, to help us create the gingerbread cookies, over here on Pixabay, I'm going to be downloading some gingerbread cookie reference images. So on Pixabay, you can type in gingerbread right here on the search, and then also you can click on this and you can change it to either illustrations or vector graphics. And it's going to show you all of these free gingerbread cookie reference images that you can use. So I'm going to be downloading 2 reference images from Pixabay to help me with the modeling. So I'll be downloading this gingerbread man, and I'll also be downloading this gingerbread Christmas tree. And then over here on Ambient CG, I will be downloading the Marble 12 texture, and I'm going to be downloading the 4K JPEG. And then over here on polyhaven.com, I will be downloading this Artist Workshop HDRI to help us get some nice realistic lighting, and I will be downloading the 1K version and the HDR version, and I'll just download this. So all of the links will be in the description if you'd like to download the same resources that I will be using. So specifically in this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to create a gingerbread man and a gingerbread Christmas tree and a gingerbread star. And then once you've learned how to create those 3 things, you'll totally have the skills to go ahead and create all of the different Christmas cookies that you'd like to make. So I'm just going to double tap the A key to select everything, and then I will press X, and I just want to delete everything. And then also right down here in the corner are my screencast keys so that you can see what buttons I'm pressing. So I first want to add in the reference images so that we can model the gingerbread cookies. So I'm going to press Shift A, and I'm going to go right down here to image, and then I want to add a reference image. So I'll first be adding the gingerbread man, so I'm just going to double click on this to add it in, and then I'll also press Shift A and go to image, and I'll add another reference image. And then this time I'm going to be adding the Christmas tree. Of course, you can use whatever reference images you want, or you could also just model it in Blender without references, just kind of looking at some reference images on the side of your screen or whatever you want to do. I'm just going to click on load reference image. All right, so we have our 2 reference images, but you can see that they're kind of rotated at an odd angle. So I'm going to double tap the A key to select them both. And then I want to press Alt R. So Alt R is going to clear the rotation of the images. So I now just want to select one of them. I'll select the tree, and then I'll press G to grab, and then I'll hold down my middle mouse wheel and then let go to constrain it to the X-axis and just drop it right there. And then on the numpad, I can press 7, and that is going to bring us to top view. Now, before we start with the modeling, I want to close the timeline because I don't really need it. It's just kind of taking up some extra space. So I'm going to hover my mouse right over here, and when the crosshair appears, I'm going to click, hold my mouse down and drag up, and then I can drag down, and then you can see there's a little arrow there, and then I'll let go, and that's going to close the timeline. All right, so let's get started with the modeling. Now I'm just going to press Shift C to make sure this 3D cursor is in the center of our scene. So I'll press Shift C, and then I'm going to press Shift A, and because we're modeling the gingerbread man first, I'm going to go to Mesh, and I'm going to add a circle. And then I'll press 7 on the numpad just to make sure I'm on top view. So I can now press Tab to go into edit mode, and I'll press G to grab, kind of bring that up, and I'll press S to scale, and I'll scale that down. And then I want to press S to scale, and I'll scale it on the X-axis, so I'll hit X and just scale that out a little bit so it kind of is the general shape of the gingerbread man. Now, I don't really care to model it exactly to the reference image. I'm just going to be using the reference image just to get the basic shape, so this is good enough for me. So I'm going to press A to select everything, and then I want to fill a face in here because right now this doesn't actually have a face. So I will press F, and F will fill a face in those vertices. So now what I want to do is deselect everything by pressing A, and then I want to press B, and B is going to bring up the box select, and I want to click and drag and just drag a box around there just so that we select these vertices. So I can now press S to scale, and I want to scale these flat. So I'll press S to scale, then I want to scale it on the Y axis, so I'll hit Y, and then I want to flatten them down so that they're perfectly straight. So I'm going to type in 0, and then enter. And then you can now see that these are all straight. So I'll press G to grab, kind of bring them up there, kind of like that. And I think I'll press S and scale that out a bit. All right, so I can now press E, and E is going to extrude these, and I'll just bring them down like that, and then I'll press S to scale and make it a little bit bigger. So I could just kind of extrude it up and start to make the arms, but we are going to be adding a subdivision surface modifier to this object, and so I want there to be a little bit of a gap here for the neck, and that will just work better with the subsurf. So I can now press E to extrude, and I'm just going to extrude down the body, and I'll press S to scale and scale that out, and then bring it down with G. All right, that is looking pretty good. So I can now deselect everything, and then I just want to select this side and kind of extrude it out. Now, if you wanted to, you could cut the mesh in half and just delete one side, and that way you could add the mirror modifier, and then you wouldn't have to model both sides. But I want this gingerbread cookie to look very organic and natural, so I'm not going to be using the mirror modifier because I want each side to look just slightly different, and it'll just make it look a little bit more realistic. So I'm going to select this vertex and then hold down the Shift key and select this vertex. So I can now press E and extrude that out, and I'll bring it over, and then I'll press R to rotate and S to scale and just kind of stick it right there. And then I can press E to extrude and S to scale, just kind of put that right there. And then we don't really have very much topology right in here, so I'm going to add some loop cuts. So I'm going to press Control R to add a loop cut, and I want to put a loop cut right here in the middle, but I want to scroll my mouse wheel out so that there are two. And then I can left click and then right click so it just hops back to the center there. So I can now select this vertex, and I'll press G to grab, select this vertex, press G to grab, and just kind of move this around if you need to bring it around at all. And it's totally okay that it's kind of blocky because, as I said, we will be adding the subdivision surface modifier to kind of smooth out the edges. All right, so let's do the same thing for the other side. So I'm going to shift and select all of these vertices. Then I can press E and extrude that out. And then I can press R and rotate that. And then press S to scale and just scale that down a little bit. And then we'll extrude that out again. We'll scale it down. And then I can select this, G to grab, put that there. Select this vertex, and I'll press G to grab and stick it right there. So pretty basic modeling. That is looking pretty good. So now what I want to do is press B for the box select, and I'm going to click and drag and just box select those bottom vertices. And I'll press E to extrude, and then S to scale, kind of bring that down, E to extrude, and S to scale. We'll just keep doing that. So E to extrude, scale this up like that. And then because the legs are kind of coming out kind of on the side, I'm going to select these vertices, and I'll just press G to grab, and I'll just manually place them kind of around here. So I'll put that one around there, kind of make this somewhat even. Select this one, G to move it over. Select this one and G to move it. Actually, I want to move this one down here and then just kind of evenly put these around. All right, that is pretty good. So I can now select these. So I'm just going to hold down the Shift key and select all of those vertices, and I'll press E to extrude. We'll kind of bring that out. R to rotate, bring that over, and then E to extrude again, kind of bring that over. We can press S to scale, kind of scale it down. And then I can just manually select these, and I'll press G to grab and just kind of move them around. Just like that. All right, that's looking pretty good. So we'll do the same thing over on this side. So I'm just going to shift select all these, and I'll press E to extrude, R to rotate that over, and then E to extrude again, press R to rotate, and then S, and we'll scale that down a little bit. So I'm just going to now select these vertices and just kind of manually place them around the foot there. All right, just like that. So now what I want to do is give this gingerbread cookie some thickness. So I'm going to click right over here on the modifier properties. Now to give it some thickness, we can click on Add Modifier, and we can add the solidify modifier. So if you zoom in here, you can see now it just has a little bit of thickness, but on the thickness value right here, I can turn this up, and that's going to give the cookie more thickness. So I'm just going to bring the thickness out, really just bring it out however you want. If you want a bit of a thicker cookie or a really thin gingerbread cookie, just do whatever you want. I think 0.3 looks pretty good. All right, so now I need to add a subdivision surface modifier because you can see that this is all blocky. So I'm going to click on Add Modifier, and we can go right down here under Generate to subdivision surface. So this is going to subdivide the mesh and smooth it all out. Now you can't really see it very well, and that's because of this gingerbread reference image. So I don't really actually need the reference image anymore, so I can just select it, and then I will press X, and I want to delete it. All right, so now you can see that there are some problems with the mesh, and that is because if I tab into edit mode, there isn't very much geometry. There is geometry around the side, but then there's just one big face, so it's kind of stretching the faces. So to fix this, I am going to press 3, or you can also click right here to go to the face select. So I can now select this face, and then I want to give it more geometry, so I'm just going to press I. So I is going to inset that face, and I'll just bring that down. Click to place that, and then I'll press I again because you can see right here there's still a little bit of stretching there in the shading, so I'll press I again to inset that, scale it down, and then just click to place that. Alright, so there we go. So I can tab back into object mode, and you can see that is looking much better. And then also I do want to give it 2 levels of subdivision, just because this is still a little bit low topology. So right down here on the subsurf, I'm going to turn the viewport levels up to 2. So now the viewport and the render are both set to 2, and that is looking much better. So now our gingerbread cookie is looking much more smooth. And then you can use the object context menu to shade the object smooth. Now also, if you want to sharpen up this edge right here, you can do that. So what you could do is you could apply the solidify modifier and then add a loop cut in here. So on the solidify modifier, if you click on the arrow, then you can apply the modifier. So now the modifier is applied, and if you tab in edit mode, you can see now this is actual geometry, so it's not a modifier anymore. And then you can press Control R, and you can add a loop cut kind of around here. So just add some loop cuts just to kind of thicken up the edge there. I don't really like that too much because I think a gingerbread cookie looks nice if it's kind of round. So I'm going to press Control Z to undo that. And I'll just continue to press Control Z until the solidify modifier is back. And then also, if you want to change the thickness, you could play around with that as well. But I think that looks pretty good for our gingerbread man. Now I should have done this earlier, but I haven't saved our project yet. So let's go File and then click on Save As. And then I'll be saving this as gingerbread cookies in a folder with my other project files, and I'll just save that. And then as you're working on the Blender project, you can just press Control S, and that is going to save the Blender file. Alright, so before we continue with the gingerbread man, I do want to add the marble tabletop, and then I also want to do the lighting. So let's just do that. So again, I'll press Shift C just to make sure the 3D cursor is in the very center there. So I can now press Shift A, and I'm going to add a plane for the marble tabletop. And then I can press G to grab and Z to bring it down on the Z axis. Just kind of bring it down like that, and then I can press S to scale. I'll scale it way up, something like that, scale it pretty big. And also you can navigate underneath the tabletop, and you can press G again, and then Z, so G to grab and Z on the Z axis, and then you can just drag your mouse. And I'm also holding down the Shift key to make my movements very sensitive, and I'll just bring that down. All right, so you can just see a tiny little bit of the gingerbread man, but he's mostly on the top here, so that is good. And then also I think it would be nicer if everything was just like a little bit above the grid. So I'll press A to select everything, and I'll press G and Z, and then I'll just bring everything up just like that. So they're just a little bit above the grid. So let's add a camera now. So I'll press Shift A, and I'm going to go right down here and add a camera. And then we can just move the camera to wherever we want it to be. And we can also move the camera around later. But for now, I'm just going to move the camera right here. So I'm just going to move my view right here, and then I can press Control Alt Numpad 0. So Control Alt Numpad 0 will bring the camera to where we are. And then if the camera is selected, you can press G to grab and just kind of move the camera around. You can also press G and then tap the Z key twice, and that's going to bring it in and out. And I'll just stick it right there. All right, so now let's set up the lighting. So I'm gonna go right over here to the world. And then as I talked about earlier in the video, I will be adding in that HDRI from Polyhaven. So to add in the HDRI, I'm gonna click on this little yellow dot right there on the color. And then I wanna change this to environment texture so that we can add in the HDRI. And then I'll just hit open. And then here's the Artist Workshop HDRI that I'll be using. Again, the link is in the description if you'd like to download it. So I'll just double click on this to open it up. So I'll press 0 on the numpad to go into the camera view again, and then I want to add a boundary around the camera, and that way it's only going to render what is inside the camera. So I'll press B for the box select, and I'm just going to click and drag, and then let go, and just drag a box around the camera, and that way it's going to add a boundary, and so whatever is in the boundary, that's what it'll render. So that way Blender won't have to render all of this around here. So if I press Z and then move my mouse up and let go to go into rendered view, it's only going to render that little area, and that'll make preview times faster. And then, as you may have figured out by now, I will be using cycles render in this tutorial, but Eevee will totally work fine. Everything works in Eevee, so if you'd rather do this in Eevee, you can do that. I just use cycles because it's more realistic. Alright, so this HDRI is looking pretty good. It adds some nice realistic lighting, and I like those shadows there, but I want everything to be a little bit brighter. So I'm going to go right over here to the world, and then over here on the HDRI, I'm just going to turn the strength up to like a 2. And that is quite a bit brighter now, and that looks much better. Alright, so now I'm going to create a procedural gingerbread material. So I'm going to click on the gingerbread man, and then I want to go right up here to the shading tab so that we can create a procedural material. So I'm going to go into rendered mode, and then also in the camera view, I will press Control B, and then I'm just going to drag a box around the gingerbread man just so that it renders much faster. Alright, so let's click on the gingerbread man, and I'm going to click on new to create a new material, and I can just call this gingerbread. So I'll press Shift A, and I'm going to click on the search, and I'm going to search for a noise texture, and let's click on the noise texture and drop it down here. And then I'm going to be using the Node Wrangler add-on. So if you don't have the Node Wrangler enabled, just click on Edit up here and then open up the preferences. And then right over here on the add-ons, you can just go over here to the search and you can type in Node and then just turn on the Node Wrangler add-on, and I'll show you how to use it in the video. And then you can close the user preferences. So with the Node Wrangler turned on now, I can click on this node and then I'm going to press Control T, and that is going to add the texture coordinate and mapping. And then we don't really need the mapping node, so I'm going to select it and I will press X to delete it, and I'll just bring the texture coordinate over, and then I want to use the object coordinate, so I'll plug the object up to the vector, and that way it'll place the noise texture around the object more evenly. And then to preview this material, I can hold down the Control and Shift key and then click on different nodes, and that will preview the different nodes. So I'm going to turn this scale here on the noise texture to a 3, and then I'll turn the detail to 15 so it's nice and detailed. And then I'll turn the roughness value to a 0.7. So now you can see we have a nice texture in there for our gingerbread. So I'm going to take the factor and I'm going to plug the factor into the base color of the principled. And then we can Control and Shift and click on the principled BSDF to preview that. Now it doesn't really look like gingerbread right now, so I want to add the color ramp node in here, and that way we can change the different colors to make it look more like gingerbread. So I'll press Shift A and I'm going to search for a color ramp, and let's drop the color ramp right in here between the noise texture and the principled. Just drop it in there, and then let's change the colors in between here. So the black tab, I'm actually just going to leave that where it is and keep it black, but this color right here, I'm going to make this a gingerbread color. So I'll click on the white tab and then I can click on this color right here, and I'm going to make it a nice gingerbread color, so kind of a orangey reddish color, and I'll make it a bit darker as well. And if you'd like to use the exact same color that I'm using, the color that I've found to work best, if you click on this, you can go over to the hex value and you can type in a hex value of CF7D42. So if you type that into the hex value, that will give you the same exact color that I'm using, and I think this color looks pretty nice for gingerbread. Now the gingerbread is very smooth right now, so what I want to do is take the factor from this noise texture, and I'm going to plug this data into the normal to give it some bump. But then we need to convert this to normal data because this factor value, this is black and white data, but we need normal data to be plugging into the normal. So to convert this to normal data, I'm going to press Shift A and I'm going to click on the search, and I'm going to search for a bump node, and then let's just drop the bump node right in here, and that will convert it. Now we actually need to take the factor and we need to plug that into the height value on the bump, and then the bump can go into the normal. So the normal to the normal. And now you can see that gingerbread is looking nice and rough. Now it is a bit too strong right now, so on this strength value, I'm going to change it to like a 0.2 so it's less strong. So now I want to create just a few more textures and put that into the bump as well, because this is just a little bit simple. So what I'm going to do is press Shift A and I'm going to search for a Voronoi texture. I'll add the Voronoi texture, and then I want to use the same object coordinates on the Voronoi. So I'm going to take this object right here, and I'm going to plug it into the vector on the Voronoi. And then I can Control, Shift, and click on the Voronoi to preview it. So I want to change the scale here to like an 8. Now this isn't really looking like a gingerbread texture at all. So what I want to do is press Shift A, and I'm going to search for another noise texture. So I'm going to click on the noise texture, and then I actually want to drop the noise texture in between here. So what this will do is it will actually distort how the Voronoi texture is placed on the object. So I'll drop this in here, and now you can see we have that nice, cool, distorted look. And make sure that the color from the noise texture is going into the vector. So now on this noise texture, I'm going to change the scale to a 3, and then I'll turn the detail all the way up to 15, so it has much more detail. And you can see that it's starting to look pretty cool. And then I'll also turn this roughness value up to like a 0.6, so it has some more roughness. So now we have a really nice black and white texture map here, and we can add this into the bump as well. So what I'm going to do is click on this bump node, I'll kind of bring it up, and then I want to press Shift D to duplicate the bump node. Then I just want to drop it right in here between this connection. So the normal can just go through the normal, and then the normal can go through the normal. So we now have this extra height value that we can add data into to give it more bump. So I want to take the distance value, this black and white data from the Voronoi, and I want to plug that into the height value on the bump. So if I now Control, Shift, and click on this bump, you can see what it's doing. So we have this one here, and this is just kind of some nice detail over the entire thing. But then you can see this bump is adding some really cool effects. So it's adding like these little parts that are kind of popping up a little bit, and I do think that makes it look much more like a crackery gingerbread material. So I can now hold down the Control and Shift key and click on the principle to preview that. You can see that is looking very nice. It's looking much more like gingerbread. And then also one other thing, you could turn the roughness down if you wanted to, make them a bit more shiny or a bit more rough. I think they actually do look pretty nice if they're a little bit more shiny, because gingerbread cookies are a little bit kind of crackery and a little bit dry, so they would probably be just a little bit shiny. So I'm going to turn the roughness here to a 0.4, just so that they're slightly more shiny. All right, let's press Control S again to save, and that is it for the gingerbread material. So now we are going to be creating the frosting. So to create the frosting, I'm going to go back over here to the layout just so that we can see the entire thing. We can see the 3D space in full screen. So I'm now going to press 7 to go to the top view, and then again press Shift C to make sure the 3D cursor is in the very center there. So I'm now going to press Shift A, and to start off by creating the frosting, I'm going to add a plane. So then I can press G and Z and just bring the plane up so that we can see it. And then I'll press 7 for top view. So I can tab into edit mode now, and I want to select these 2 top vertices, and I'll press X to delete, and I want to delete the vertices. So I can now press A to select the remaining vertices, and I'll press G to grab and just kind of put them in the center there, just like that. All right, I can tab back into object mode. So what I want to do is I want to give these vertices some thickness and then kind of subdivide them so that they're kind of smooth. So to do this, I'm going to click right over here on the modifier properties, and I can click on add modifier, and I'm going to go right down here, and I want to add the skin modifier. So if you look around, you can see this is what the skin modifier is doing. So it's taking any vertices and edges and it's giving it some thickness. So it kind of looks like a cube. But what I want to do now is add the subdivision surface modifier so that it's kind of smooth and round. So I'm going to click on add modifier, and under generate, I'm going to go right down here and add the subdivision surface. So that is looking pretty good. Although I do want to turn the levels, viewport, and render. I want to turn these both up to 2, and that way it's a bit more smooth. And then also, if you try to smooth this using the object context menu, you can see that it's not working, and that's because of the skin modifier. For some reason, the skin modifier doesn't work with the shade smooth. So what you have to do is you have to just go right over here on the skin modifier and click on the shade smooth button. All right, so there we go. So we have our little piece of frosting. So I can press 7 on the numpad to go to top view. And now what I can do is I can just select these vertices, and I can press G to grab, and I can also press E to extrude, and I can start to just extrude the frosting. So I'm going to double tap the A key to select everything, and then I'll press G to grab, and I'll press R to rotate, and I'm going to start by creating the mouth. Now, if I press S to scale, you can see that it's going to scale the vertices, but it's not actually scaling the skin modifier. So to scale the thickness of the skin modifier, you can press Control A. So Control A is going to actually scale that thickness. And then if for some reason that's not working, the Control A to scale the skin modifier, you can press N to open up the side panel, and I'm going to go right here to item. And then right here, you can see that there is vertices vertice data. So if you change both of these values, so what you can do is you can click and then drag down, and then you can drag back and forth. This is another way to change the thickness of the skin modifier, but you can also just press Control A and that will change the thickness. So I'll now just press G to grab, and I'm just going to start to create the mouth, and then I also need to select everything, and I'll press Control A to make it a bit smaller. And of course you can look at reference images to help you. So I'm just going to make a classic smiley face on our gingerbread man. So I'm going to press E to extrude, and I'll extrude that out, and then E to extrude, and I'll extrude that out. Just kind of rotate that over, extrude that out, maybe scale that down a little bit, kind of rotate it, something like that. All right, that is looking pretty good. So now I want to create some eyes. So I'm going to select this first vertex, and I will press Shift D, and Shift D will duplicate that. And then I can press Control A to make it thicker. And I'll just bring that out a little bit. And then I can press Shift D to duplicate, and I'll just bring that over. So now what I want to do is I want to create some buttons, and then I also want to create some little like swiggly things kind of on the side here. So to create the little swiggly things, I'm just going to select one of these vertices, and I'll press Shift D to duplicate and drop it down here. Now I'll press E to extrude, and we're going to extrude this out, and you can see that the thickness went away. And why this happened is because I wasn't using a root vertex. If you look right over here, you can see that this one has these little red lines. This vertex has these red lines around it, and that is because it is a root vertex. So if I select this vertex, I can go right over here to the skin modifier, and I can click on Mark Root. And now this is a root vertex. So this is basically the starting of the swiggle now. And so because we have a root, now you can actually use the skin modifier. So that's just how the skin modifier works. So just make sure you either mark one of these as the root, or you can also just select this and press Shift D to duplicate it. And then that way it'll already come with a root vertex. All right, so I'll select this one here, and I'll press E to extrude, and then E to extrude, and then E to extrude, and we're just going to make kind of a little swiggly thing there. Maybe I'll extrude that out a little bit farther. And then also, just to make this look a little bit more organic and natural, you can just select some of these vertices, and you can press Control A, and Control A will scale it up or down. And you can just kind of scale these and make some randomly a little bit bigger and some randomly a little bit smaller. And this will just make it look a little bit more organic and natural. And because this is a handmade gingerbread cookie, some of the frosting will just be a little bit bigger, and some of it will be a little bit smaller. So you can just press Control A to give it a random scale. All right, that is looking pretty good. So I'm going to select this root vertex, and I'll press Shift D to duplicate it. And then I can press E to extrude and E to extrude. Maybe I'll press Control A, make that a little bit bigger, and just continue to press E to extrude and just create that swiggly shape there. All right, I'll select this one again, and I'll press Shift D to duplicate, bring it over. And then I'll just kind of extrude this again, maybe press Control A again to change the scale, and just bring that over like that. And then we'll do that one more time. So I'll press Shift D to duplicate it, bring it over, and then I can just extrude this, and just kind of give it a random little swiggle there. All right, that is looking pretty good. Now I also want to create some buttons on his shirt. So I'm going to select the eye, and I'll press Shift D to duplicate it, place it right there, and then I'll press Shift D again and Shift D again just to create some more of those buttons, just like that. All right, that is looking pretty good. Although if you go out of top view, you can see that it's way too high. So I'm going to tab to go back into object mode, and then I can press G to grab and Z and just bring it down on the Z axis. And I just want to stick these in the gingerbread man. So kind of about halfway, something like that. All right, there we go. So we have our gingerbread man. All right, so that is pretty much it for the gingerbread man. Although if you want to, you can tab back into edit mode, and you can just kind of move these around more in the 3D space. So if you want kind of the side swiggles there to be just going down a little bit on the edges, you could do that. And that would also probably make it look just a little bit more realistic. So you could just select some of these vertices and just kind of bring them down a little bit. All right, so now we are going to create the frosting material. So to create the frosting material, I'm just going to select this, and then let's click right over here on the shading tab so that we can see that in the rendered mode, and we'll also be able to create the shader nodes. So I'm going to click on new now, and I can just call this white frosting. So this material is pretty easy to set up. What I want to do is I want to turn the subsurface to a 0.2, and that way it'll allow just a little bit of light to go through it. And then for this white frosting, I'm going to take the subsurface color, and then for the subsurface color, I'm going to make this just a slightly kind of tannish, kind of pinkish color. Now I also want to add just a tiny little bit of noise and bump just to make it look a bit more realistic. So I'll press Shift A, and I'm going to search for the noise texture. Let's just drop the noise texture down here, and then I can press Control T to add the texture coordinate and mapping, but I don't need the mapping, so I'll click on it and I'll press X to delete it, and then I can plug the object up to the vector. So I want to change the scale on this to a 1.2, and then I want to plug the factor up to the normal to give it some bump. But I need to press Shift A, and I need to search for a bump node so that we can convert this to normal data. So I'll add the bump node in, and I'm just going to drop it right here, and then I want the factor to be going into the height. So now if I Control Shift and click on this, you can see it is subtle, but it's just adding a tiny little bit of bump. So some of the areas are a little bit darker and some of the other areas are a little bit lighter. So if I Control Shift and click on the bump node, you can see it's just giving it a tiny bit of bump. So we can now Control Shift and click on this to preview the material. Now it is really hard to see, so I'm actually going to change the scale here to like a 2, and that way it's scaled down a little bit more, so you can now start to see that bump right in there. Now that is actually a bit too bumpy, so on the strength here, I'm going to just change the strength value to a 0.2, so it's less bumpy. So it is subtle, but it just adds a tiny little bump and a tiny little bit of randomness on the frosting. Alright, so that gingerbread man is starting to look very cool, but I do want to add a different frosting color for the buttons. So I'm going to go right back over here to the layout, and I actually want to select the frosting, and I'll tab into edit mode. And then I want to press Z, move my mouse over, go into wireframe, and I'm going to use the box select, so press B for the box select, and I'm going to just select these buttons right here. And then actually I don't want this to be selected, so let me just press A to deselect everything. Box select that. Okay, so just make sure the buttons are selected. So I can now press P, and I want to separate by selection. So now if I tab back into object mode, this is a separate object from these objects. So I can select this object, and then let's go over here to the shading tab again. So now over here in the shading tab, we just need to duplicate this material and change it to a different color. So right here up on the white frosting, I'm going to click on this button right here, and that's going to duplicate the material but keep the same data in the material. So I can now rename this to blue frosting, or you can change it to whatever color you want. So now let's just go into rendered mode just to preview that, and it looks exactly the same. So now on this blue frosting, I can just make the base color a blue color. So I'm just going to make it a pretty strong blue color like that. And then also on the subsurface, I'm just going to make it very slightly blue, so something like that. And also I do need to make this a bit stronger of a blue color. And then the subsurface also is a little bit strong, so I'm going to change the subsurf down to like a 0.1, and that way you'll be able to see the blue color even better. And let's just make it even more of a deeper blue color, so a more saturated blue. And on the subsurface color, I will make that just a little bit more blue as well. And that is our first finished gingerbread cookie. So let's click right back over here on the layout. And so now to create the Christmas tree and the Christmas star, we're pretty much just going to use the same exact method. So let's just create those, and then after that, you should have a good understanding of how to create these. And so then you can go on and create all of the different gingerbread cookies that you want to create. So I'll press 7 to go to top view, and I'm just going to kind of look over here. So to model the Christmas tree cookie now, I'll press Shift A, and I'm going to go to mesh, and I'm going to add a plane. I can press G to grab, kind of bring this over, and then you can also press G and Z to bring it up so that it's above the reference image. So I can now tab into edit mode, and I want to press Control R, and I want to add a loop cut right here, but then I want to scroll out so that there are 2 loop cuts, and then I can left click and then right click. So now what I can do is I can just press B for the box select and select all these, and I'll press S to scale and scale them way down, just like that. And then I can select these vertices and press G to grab and just kind of move them over and just stick them into place like that. So now what I want to do is I want to press Control R, and I want to add a loop cut right in here. So I can just click to add a loop cut and just kind of drag it down a little bit, just like that. And then what I want to do is I want to select this vertex and shift select this vertex, and I'll press G to grab and just move this up like that. All right, so this is going up and then down. So now what I can do is I can press B for the box select, and I can just box select all of these bottom vertices, and I'll press S to scale that down, and then I'll press G to grab, and I want to bring this up so that these are all about straight. All right, so they should be pretty straight. So now what I need to do is just select this, press G to grab, bring it over, and just kind of align this and select this, press G to grab, and I kind of align that to the reference. And then right here, these are where we're going to extrude it out again. So I can just box select these vertices, and I'll press S to scale, kind of scale that like that. Then I can press E to extrude, we're going to bring this down, and then I'll press S to scale, and we'll scale that up. But again, I want to do the same thing so that the topology is a bit nicer. So I'll press Control R to add a loop cut, we're going to click, drag down, and then click to place that. And then I can select this vertex and shift select this vertex, and I'll press G to grab and just kind of bring that up. And then again, using B for the box select, I can box select these bottom ones, and I'll press S to scale them down, and I'll press G to grab and just kind of move those up like that. And then again, I want to box select all of these, and I'll scale them up and just kind of move them down like that. So now I can select this vertex and shift select these other vertices, and I can press S to scale, and we'll do that one more time. So press E to extrude, bring that down, S to scale, and we can scale that up. And then these two ones right here, we can use this to extrude down the trunk of the tree. So just scale that and press G to grab, just kind of move it to the place that you want, and then press E to extrude, and we're going to just extrude that down. Just like that. All right, so there is our Christmas tree shape. So we don't actually need this reference anymore, so I can click on it, and I'll press X, and then I'll click on delete just to delete that. And then I can press Control S again to save. So now we can do the same thing. So we can add the solidify modifier and then add the subsurf. So I'm going to click on add modifier, and let's add the solidify modifier. And then we can turn the thickness up just to make it a bit thicker. So press G to grab and bring it over on the X axis, and then press G and Z, and we can kind of bring that down, and we can just compare the thickness. So let's turn the thickness up a bit, just like that. And then I want to add the subdivision surface modifier just to kind of smooth out those edges. So I'll click on add modifier, and we can add the subdivision surface. And then down here on the subdivision surface, I want to turn the levels of viewport and render both up to 2. And then using the object context menu, I can shade this object smooth. So now I want to add some loop cuts to define the shape of the tree a little bit better, because the subsurf has smoothed it all out. Before we do that though, I want to apply the solidify. So I'm just going to click right here on the solidify, and I'll click on apply, and that'll apply the solidify. So now it's actual geometry. So now what I can do is I can press Control R, and I can just add a loop cut there, kind of in the center. I'll just place it in the center to kind of thicken up the side right there. And then I can press Control R, and I can add some loop cuts here. So I'll add a loop cut there. Control R, click and drag and add a loop cut there. And let's press Control R and add a loop cut there, kind of drag it down like that. And then also Control R and add a loop cut there. We'll also press Control R and add a loop cut there. And then also I'll press Control R again, we're going to add a loop cut there, and Control R and drag a loop cut over there to kind of thicken that up. And then also I need to press Control R and drag that down to sharpen that up. And then also you can see that something is looking a little bit weird right here. So in edit mode, I'll press Control R and add a loop cut there, and Control R and add a loop cut there. So we're just basically sharpening up those edges, and that looks much better now. And then if you wanted to, you could press Control R and add another one there, and Control R and add another one there just to thicken those up. Now up here on the top, because we've added so many loop cuts, you can see that it's looking a bit sharp right there, and that looks a little bit weird. So what I'm going to do is press G and Z and kind of bring it up so that we can see the entire thing. And then in edit mode, I'm going to press 3 or click right up here to go to the face select. And I'm going to select this face and then shift and select this face. So I can now press S and I want to scale that. And I want to press X to scale it on the X axis, and I'll just scale that down. And then I can press 7 for top view, and I'll press G to grab and just kind of bring that up and just kind of rotate it. So now it's much more smooth, and that looks a lot better. So I'll just select the cookie in object mode, and I'll press G and Z and just kind of push it down there onto the tabletop. So now let's give it the correct materials. So I'm going to select this, and let's go over to the material properties, and on the drop down I'm just going to add the gingerbread material. And then we also just want to select the frosting for the gingerbread man, and I'll press Shift D to duplicate, and then click and let go with my mouse wheel to constrain it over here, and I'll just bring that over there. And there we go, our Christmas tree now has a little face. But I don't want that, so I'm going to tab into edit mode, and then I'll press 7 to go to top view. So what I can do is I can just press B for the box select, and I want to box select all of these except for just one of them, and I'll press X to delete, and I can delete the vertices. So I can now just select this vertex right here, and I'll press G to grab, kind of bring that up there, and then I will press Shift D to duplicate, bring that down there, because I want to create some squiggles kind of going along there. It's kind of a squiggly line. So I'll press Control A. Control A will scale that down, and then I can press G to grab, and maybe Control A, make that a little bit smaller. So I'll press E and extrude that out, E to extrude again, maybe Control A, scale that down, and E to extrude again, and just continue to press E and just extrude that and just make it go up and down just like that. Maybe bring this over a little bit and then kind of extrude this over. And if it's a little bit too strong, you kind of bring that down a little bit. And then I think I'll actually box select the entire thing, and I want to scale it on the x-axis and kind of bring that over. That way there's a little bit more swiggles, swiggly lines. So I can now add a few more, just like that. All right, that is looking good. So I'm just going to press B for the box select, just box select all of the swiggly line. I'll press Shift D to duplicate and just drop that down there. And then I just want to kind of select some of these and just kind of move it around just so that it looks slightly different. You could even box select the entire thing and just scale it, or just kind of bring it over. I think I might just bring it over there. And then I can select this and press E to extrude and just continue to extrude that out and make that a little bit bigger. And then just make it a little bit more random so it looks a bit different from this one. So something like that. All right, let's box select this one and I'll press Shift D to duplicate. And then to make this one look a little bit different, I can press R to rotate, and I want to rotate this by 180 degrees. So I'm going to type in 180, and you can see right here it says rotation 180, and I'll press enter, and that way it just rotates it over. Then I can just bring it over and then just select this, and I'll press E to extrude, and we're just going to keep extruding that and making the little swiggly frosting. And then I can just box select a little bit of the frosting, and I'll press Shift D to duplicate, and I'm going to make just a little bit of frosting right up here. So I'll scale it down and just kind of stick it into place there. I'll maybe delete this, and I think I'll delete this part and then just kind of bring that over and just add a little bit of frosting up there on the top. So now what I can do is I can just select this vertex right here, and I'm going to press Shift D to duplicate it, and I'll press Control A to make it a bit smaller. And I'm just going to continue to duplicate these by pressing Shift D, and these are going to look like the Christmas ornaments on the Christmas tree, or the Christmas lights, just to decorate the tree. So I'm just going to press Shift D and just kind of randomly place these kind of evenly around, but make it kind of random. So I'll just keep on duplicating these. All right, there we go. So we can go into the camera view, and let's just select the camera, and I'll press G to grab and just kind of move that over so you can see both of them. So let's go into rendered mode and we can just kind of see how that's looking. So that's looking pretty cool. But if I zoom in here, I can see that the frosting is a little bit high. So I'm going to select the frosting, and I'll press G and Z and just push that down just a little. And then if I press Z and move my mouse down to go into the material preview, this is all white, and I actually want to make the frosting green. And then I also want to have some other colors here for the little ornaments. So I'm going to select the frosting, and then right over here on the material properties, I want to click on this button, and this will duplicate the material. And then I want to call this green frosting. All right, green frosting. So I can now take the base color and I can make that kind of a green color, maybe make it a little bit darker. And then on the subsurface color, I do just want to make this slightly green and a bit darker. Let's go into rendered mode and just see how that's looking. I think that's pretty good, although I do want to make the green color a little bit stronger. And then this subsurface, I do want to make that a bit more green and a bit darker. So now I want to make the Christmas ornaments be a different color, kind of like what we did on this one. So I'm going to tab into edit mode, and what I can do is I can just press Z, move my mouse over to go into wireframe, and I just want to press A to make sure everything is deselected. So I can now hover my mouse over the squiggly lines, and I can press L, and I'm going to press L and L and L. And what this is going to do is it's going to select all of the vertices which are linked to each other. So now that I have all those selected, I can press Control I, and Control I is going to invert the selection. So now everything else is selected, so just the dots are selected. Then I can press P, and I want to separate this by selection. So now if you go into object mode, you can see these are a separate object from these. So I can just select this, and I want to click on this button right here again to duplicate the material. And now it says green frosting is 001. So I can just change this to red frosting. So now on the base color, I can make this red, and I do want to make it a bit brighter and more red. And then on the subsurface, I'll make this a little bit red as well, kind of a little bit darker like that, and maybe make it a little bit brighter. All right, and then just look at that in rendered mode. mode, I do think I want to make the subsurface color a little bit more red and a little bit brighter. Alright, so we now have 2 gingerbread cookies. So in this tutorial, I will be creating one more gingerbread cookie. I'm going to be creating a star, but then in your own time, you can totally go ahead and create any gingerbread cookie that you want to create. So to create the star gingerbread cookie, I'm actually going to be using a Blender add-on. So to enable the Blender add-on, I'm just going to click on Edit and then just go to the Preferences. And then right over here on Add-ons, over here on the search, you can start to type in Extra. And when you type in Extra, you can see that the Add Mesh Extra Objects add-on will appear, and you just want to check that and turn it on. So now that that's turned on, I'm going to press Shift-A, and if you go to Mesh, you can see that there are a bunch of extra objects right here. So I'm going to go right down here and I'm going to go to Extras, and then I want to add in the simple star. So I'm just going to click on that to add it in. And you can see it's right there, so I need to press G to grab, just kind of move it up and bring it over. Now I want to change the shape of the star, so I'm going to use the Object Context menu, and then I'm going to click on Change Star. So when I click on Change Star, right behind me, if you click on that little arrow there, which says Simple Star, you can change the settings for the star. So I want to actually change the points to 6, and that's all I want to do. So I can now just close the simple star. So this star already has thickness, so we don't have to add any solidify. So I'm just going to press G and Z and we'll bring that down. And then I need to tab into edit mode and I want to press S to scale, and I want to scale it down just like that because it's a bit too thick. So I'll bring it down to about there, and then I can bring that down a little bit more. And I think I'll scale the entire thing up a little bit because I do want it to be a bit bigger, and then tab back into edit mode and we'll scale it again. So press S to scale on the Z axis and just make it a bit thinner, something like that. So let's go back to the modifiers. I'm going to click on add modifier and we can add the subdivision surface modifier. And then I'll turn the viewport to 2. Turn the viewport up to 2, and then we can shade that smooth using the Object Context menu. So again, just like the Christmas tree, it's kind of smoothing out the edges too much. So I'm going to tab into edit mode, and to fix this, I'm going to press Control R, and then left click and right click, and then go over here, Control R, left click and right click, and I'm just going to continue to do that for pretty much all around the star. So Control R, left click and right click, Control R, left click and right click. Just continue to do that by pressing Control R all around, and that will just sharpen up those edges a little bit. So something like that. All right, that's pretty good. And then I also want to press Control R, and I'm going to left click and right click just to sharpen up the edge there on the side. Now it does still just look a little bit stretched kind of right there on the sides and kind of on the top. So I'm going to tab into edit mode, and then I'm going to click right here to the face select, or you can also press 3 on the top of your keyboard. So I now want to press B for the box select, and I'm going to select all of these. So just box select all those top faces, and then I will press I, and I will inset the faces, and I'll just bring them down and then just click and place it right there. So that is looking much better for our star. I'll just bring this over and kind of bring it up a little bit. So now I'm going to select the frosting on the Christmas tree, and I'll press Shift D to duplicate and bring it over. I can tab into edit mode, and then I need to press Z, move my mouse over, go into wireframe, and then I need to click right here to go back to the vertex select, and I just want to press B for the box select. And I want to select all of these, and I will press X to delete, and I want to delete the vertices. So I can press A to select these now, and I'll press G to grab. We're going to bring it over on the Y axis, just kind of bring that down. I'll also press 7 on the numpad to go to top view. So I just want to rotate this and just kind of stick it like that, and I want to put this kind of in the center. And then I can actually delete these vertices. Let's shift and select these, and we will delete them. So, and then I can move this kind of into the center, and I'll select this one and I'll press G to grab, kind of bring that up. And then I can press E to extrude again and E to extrude again. So now I can select right here, select that vertex right there, and I can press E to extrude and bring that up, E to extrude, kind of bring that up. So we're sort of creating like a snowflake texture on the top of this. So if you wanted it to be a snowflake, it could be a snowflake instead. I'm just going to select this vertex and I'll press E to extrude and select it again, E to extrude, basically just like that, and maybe bring this up a little bit. So I'm now going to press A to select everything, and I'll press Shift D, and then I can press R to rotate and G to grab, and we're just going to stick that right in there, and then I can press Shift D again, rotate that over, press R to rotate, and just kind of stick that right there. I'll press Shift D again, and then R to rotate, G to grab, stick that right in there, Shift D again, and R to rotate, and kind of stick that right there. And then I'll press Shift D to duplicate one more time, and R to rotate, and G to grab. So now that we have all of these, I just want to box select all of them, and I want to merge them all together. So now that they're all selected, I'm going to press M, and then I want to click on Merge at Center. So now they're all merged into the center, and that looks really good. And it kind of looks like a snowflake or a star. And then I'm going to tab back into edit mode, and I actually want to select these pieces, and I just want to bring them down just a little bit because I do want to add just a little dot kind of on the edges there. So I'll just kind of bring this down like that. So I can now press Shift D to duplicate, drop that there, and then I can press Control A to make that thicker. And then I can press Shift D, and I'm just going to duplicate these and just put them all around. So Shift D to duplicate, and we're just going to put those all around with Shift D, and there we go. So now we have that, and let's also select the frosting, and I'll press G to grab, Z on the Z axis, and just stick that down there, just like that. And then let's press Z and move down and let go to go into the material preview. And I just want to select this, and then I'm going to click right over here on the material properties. And I don't want it to be green frosting. I'm going to click on this, and I want to change it back to white frosting. And then on the edges, I want that to be a yellow color. So I'm going to tab into edit mode, and I'm going to go into the wireframe view, and I just want to select this vertex and then hold down the Shift key and select all of these vertices. So just Shift select all those. So now that they're all selected, I need to press P, and I want to separate them by selection. So now if we go back into a solid view, tab back into object mode, you can see this is a separate material. So then one more time, I'm going to click on this button right here, and that will duplicate the material. And I can just call this yellow frosting. Okay, yellow frosting, and then the base color can just be kind of a bright yellow color, and the subsurface can be a little bit more towards the orange. All right, back into the camera view. Let's just kind of move this out so we can kind of see the entire thing. Just kind of bring the camera over. Let's go into render mode and just see how that is looking. So we need to select the star, and then right over here on the materials, we need to add the gingerbread material, and there we go. So those are all of the gingerbread cookies that I'll be creating in the video. So now you should know how to go ahead and create any more that you want. So if you want to create like a gingerbread house, or you could also create like a candy cane or different things like that. Now I haven't actually added a material for the plane here. So let's select the plane, and then I'm going to go to the shading tab. And then right here, I'm going to click on new, and I can just call this marble. Marble, because I want this to be kind of like a marble surface, kind of like maybe a marble kitchen top or something like that. So then earlier in the tutorial, we turned on the Node Wrangler add-on. So what I'm going to do is just select the principled BSDF, and then I can press Control Shift T. And when you press Control Shift T, it's going to open up Blender's file browser. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the folder where I extracted the zip file. So when you download the marble texture, it's going to give you a zip file, and you can just extract the zip file and go into the folder. So I'm going to select the color map, and then I'm going to hold down the Control key and also select the roughness map. And then right down here, I'm going to click on Principled Texture Setup. And this way, the Node Wrangler add-on is going to automatically set up the materials for us. So now if we go up into rendered view by pressing Z, moving your mouse up into rendered mode, you can see that marble table. Now I do want to change the scale because the scale isn't very good. It's way too big. So we could change the UV mapping to change the scale, but we can easily enough just use this mapping node instead. So on the mapping node right here in the materials, I'm going to go down to the scale value, and I'm going to click and then drag down, and then I can drag left and right, and it's going to change the scale of that marble texture. So I'm going to scale that up to something like that. And then if you want to make the marble look a bit more white, you can press Shift A, and you can search for the RGB curves node. Let's just drop the RGB curves node right in here between the base color and the principled. And then if you drag this tab up, it's going to make the marble a bit lighter. And then if you want to drag this tab down, it's going to make the marble a bit more contrasty. So the darker parts are going to be even darker. But then if you drag this one up, it's going to make the lighter parts lighter. So let's go back into the layout now. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to duplicate these and move them all around. All right, so what I've done is I've just selected all of the pieces of the different cookies. So I've just held down the Shift key and selected all the different pieces, and then to duplicate them, you just press Shift D to duplicate, and then you can bring them over on the X-axis and the Y-axis, and then just bring them over, and you can also give them a random rotation by pressing R to rotate and Z on the Z-axis, and just kind of rotate them around. So that's what I've done. I've just duplicated them and moved them all around, and you can see I've made some different variations of Christmas trees. So really what I've done is I've just selected the different ornaments and I've made them a different material. So I've also done that for like the gingerbread cookies. So this one was red with white. And then I've also created some other gingerbread cookies like a house here and a candy cane using the same exact technique. And you can see on this one, I added a little scarf. So I really just used the same techniques. I just duplicated these and then I just continue to duplicate them and move them over. And then to make some of them red, I just separated them into their own object and added a red one and then also added the white frosting on the others. And then with the camera here, I just stuck the camera right here and pointed it at all of the cookies. So real quick, I'm just going to render this and then we'll do a little bit of compositing to finish this up. So if you just click right here on the render properties, you can go down and open up the sampling, and right over here under render, I'm just going to turn the sampling up to 100 samples, and then I will also just leave the noise threshold on. So just press Ctrl S again to save, and then you can click on render and then just render the final image. Alright, and the render finished. So now what I'm going to do is just do a little bit of compositing to make the image look nicer. So I'm going to go right over here and go to the compositing tab, and then I also want to click on use nodes so that I can use the compositing nodes. So I want to press Shift A, and I'm going to search for the denoise node, and I'm going to drop the denoise node right in here between the render layers and composite. And then also because we turned on the Node Wrangler add-on, I can hold down the Control and Shift key and click, and that's going to add these viewer node, and this will allow us to preview the final render in the background. And then also if you wanted to, you could press Shift A and you could search for the RGB curves, and I'm just going to drop the RGB curves right here, and you can Control Shift and click on the RGB curves to preview it. So then if you wanted to, you could do a little bit of color correction. So I might drag this up and then maybe add another little dot and drag that down to make it a bit more contrasty. And then also on the B here for blue, I'm just going to pull that up just a little to just make it a tiny bit more blue. Because I think having that soft kind of cool color is nice. And then over here on the R for red, you could drag this up just a little if you want to make it look a little bit more red. And then I'm also going to add a vignette because I think that'll make the final render look pretty nice. So to create a vignette, I'm going to press Shift A, and I'm first just going to search for an alpha over node. So I'm just going to search for alpha over, and I'm just going to drop the alpha over node right down here. And I can just drag these out a little bit. So now what I need to do is press Shift A, and I'm going to search for a box mask. Let's just drag the box mask right here. And then I can also click and drag and kind of make this a little bit bigger. So if you select the box mask, you can see there is a little white box right there. So on the width and height, I can just change the width and height, and that's going to change the size of the box. So I want to make the box pretty big. So I'm going to change the width and the height so that the box is pretty big, but you can still see it. So if I Control Shift and click on the box mask, you can see what it's doing. So basically it's black all around here, but then in the center it's white. So I now want to blur this, so I'm going to press Shift A, and I'm going to search for a blur node. Let's just drop the blur node right in here, and then I can Control Shift and click on it to preview it, and I want to turn the X and Y values both up pretty high, so I'm going to turn them up to like a 300, and because it's blurred the box mask, now there's just a little bit of a dark area kind of around there. So now to add this into the final image, I'm going to take this image here, and I'm going to put that into the factor, and then I can Control Shift and click on the alpha over. Now what we need to do is we need to take this image here from the RGB curves, and we want to put that into the bottom one. And now you can see that it's added the vignette, but it's kind of white, and I want to make it black instead. So on this image here, the top one, I'm going to make this fully black, and that will just add a vignette around the sides. And then I do think the blur is a little bit too strong. So on the X and Y values, I'm going to change these both to just like a 250, maybe even change these down to like a 200 so they're not quite as blurred. And then just make sure you Control Shift and click on the denoise so that it denoises the final thing. Alright, so to save this image, you can press F11, and F11 will take you back to the render result. And then what you can do is click right here, and you can go down and click on the viewer node to preview the final image. And then to save this image to your computer, you can just click on image, and then you click on save as, and just save this image out to your computer. And with that all finished, this is going to wrap up the tutorial on how to create Christmas gingerbread cookies in Blender. So thank you all for watching this tutorial. I hope it was helpful. I hope you learned a lot, and thank you so much for watching. And as I record this, it's almost Christmas of 2021, so Merry Christmas everyone, and I hope you all have a great Christmas day. So thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in a future tutorial.